outside of the bunker.
Made it inside. Karl Marx. Pretty sure I've seen his house in Trier, Germany, when I was there. This is a pretty incredible photograph taken on the 29th of September 1938 and shows the signatories of the Munich Agreement, essentially giving away Czech land, Czechoslovakian land. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, the French next to him, the French Prime Minister Adolf Hitler, and Mussolini of Italy. The Czech government weren't even invited to the meeting yet. They lost a large part of their land at the meeting. Pretty interesting museum so far. Here's a photograph of what was German soldiers occupying Prague. There's Hitler visiting Prague, looking out the window.
So I'm back in Wenceslas Square, and that was a really eye-opening tour. Lots of history and learned quite a bit. Well, as it turns out, at the end of the Second World War, 1945, during the Prague uprising, the country held free and open elections, and they ended up voting in a communist regime. By 1968, people were getting pretty fed up of having their lives controlled by the communist regime. Even though they did allow some freedoms, there were quite big protests across the city, mainly from students. And in 1968, something called the Prague Spring was the continuation of those protests, I guess, across the city in quite a major way. So much so that it ended up with Moscow sending in tanks and their military to quash the uprising, or to quash the Prague Spring. So from those free and open elections in 1945, 1968, with the Soviet Russian army here, the idea of a semi-free government completely disappeared, and for the next 20 or so years the country lived under the almost dictatorship of Moscow. The military of the Soviet Union remained here, and it wasn't just Russia that had invaded, it was other Soviet Warsaw Pact countries that had come in and had their military based here to stop any further uprisings. From 1968 to 1989, the years of extreme communism here, there was this concern because Prague lay just inside of the Iron Curtain, as it was called back then, the border between communism and capitalism. And the concern was that if somewhere was going to be the target of a nuclear attack, it could very well be here in Prague. So the bunker was one of hundreds of bunkers built across the city of Prague and the country of Czechoslovakia back then, and it was designed to stop people worrying so much about the threat of the Cold War. Now, the transition from communist country to capitalist country in 1989 was so peaceful that it was actually called the Velvet Revolution. So if you've heard of that term, that's what happened here in Prague and across the Czechoslovakia. It was a very peaceful transition into democracy. and it went all the way through to 1993, where you have something called the Velvet Divorce, the separation of Slovakia and the Czech Republic into separate states. I'm back in the market square. I'm about 2 minutes from jumping on the Communism and Cold War bunker tour. So we just started the tour, and this is the headquarters of the former communist secret police, where they would interrogate people that they brought in. Stepped off the tram and we're heading for the bunker now. The buildings behind me are communist era. There's a TV tower that was built in 1988, 1 year before the fall of communism. It's a pretty interesting area.
When someone wants to visit an old nuclear bunker, they want to have some adventure or something.
Yeah.
Good. See how thick the door is?
Wow.
Just informed her about ones where
photographs. This is probably the most famous picture of that time. It's Clement Gottwald himself, the first communist president, on the 25th of February 1948. That's the day when Czechoslovakia became a communist country. And so you can imagine that this picture was later everywhere, in all the newspapers, in all the textbooks, everywhere. Well, I wonder what's going on today. I was told by my boss that it will be after the trip. This plan of the bunker here. So it will finally make a better sense. So this is where we entered. This is the tower with the stairs. We went this way, this way. Now we are at the end. There are two massive doors, and basically now they're open because it's the foot of the hill.
Just came out the bunker. That was quite a fascinating look inside the world of Cold War communist run bunker that's still fit for purpose these days.